Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast that you're listening to right now. Thank you so much, called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. It is a daily podcast, 365 days a year, and each day we talk to an author about all of the things related to their career, their book, their life, and more in 30 minutes or less, because who has time? I am now an author myself, although I wasn't when I started this podcast, and you can get my new memoir, Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature, wherever books are sold starting July 1st, and my children's book, Princess Charming. You can learn more about me at zibbyowens.com, but really you're here to learn more about the authors, and that is what we're going to do. Also, be sure to check out all the other podcasts in the Zcast Podcast Network. You can learn more at zcastnetwork.com and definitely check out those shows as well. Silvia Vasquez-Lavado is the author of In the Shadow of the Mountain, a memoir of courage, which, by the way, I loved. Silvia is a humanitarian, mountaineer, explorer, social entrepreneur, and technologist living in San Francisco. In 2014, she launched Courageous Girls, a nonprofit that helps survivors of sexual abuse and trafficking with opportunities to find inner strength and cultivate their voices by demonstrating their physical strength. Courageous Girls has had projects in Nepal, India, the United States, and Peru. Vasquez-Lavado was recognized by Fortune magazine as one of the corporate heroes of 2015. CNET named her one of the 20 most influential Latinos in Silicon Valley. She has also been recognized by the Peruvian government as one of the Marca Peru ambassadors, country brand ambassadors. She is a member of the Explorers Club and one of the few women in the world to complete the 7 summits. Welcome, Silvia. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss In the Shadow of the Mountain, a memoir of courage.
Thank you, Zibby. What an honor. I have been looking forward to this conversation, so I'm so thrilled. Thank you.
I don't know if you got my note, but when I finished this, I was just sitting, I read it right in this chair here, and I just had my hand over my heart, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I went on DM Instagram, and I was like, this is the most powerful memoir I've read in so long. This is amazing. So anyway.
Thank you.
Seriously, I finished reading it, and I just felt like, oh my gosh, the intersection of I should let you talk about what the book's about, but I was just going to say this intersection of the climbing and just getting through all that and all the stuff you got through in your personal life and how it all just like intersected and came together beautifully at the end. Oh my gosh, I feel like I just went on such a journey with you and it was amazing.
Well, I mean, that was my dream. That was the goal for me when putting the story out. And it is funny, but even though the book hides as a climbing journey, it's not really like a climbing book.
No.
It is a story of us. It is actually, and I think that was my dream. I mean, for me to put the story out there, and as you were asking me, what is the book about? It is this personal, very personal, raw, intimate journey. This book is this almost open circle about going through this journey of what happens when you isolate yourself, when you're not able to really rely on community, when you're not even when you actually allow shame to try to overtake your life, and when you feel you're alone. And for me, the dream of this book was to totally shatter all these notions and actually what we do to ourselves whenever when we fester by ourselves with just all of our suffering, and to understand the beauty of what happens when we can reconnect with others, especially when we are willing to just hear each other out, support each other, the community that we can create, and even when we are able to be out in nature, just the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gifts of transformation that can happen. And so it is this really raw, vulnerable, very human story. And it's a story of all of us, especially what we have gone over the last couple of years. Who hasn't dealt with shame, addiction, loss in one way or another, not particularly maybe affecting your, to you. But yeah, I mean, to me, this was my only way to, I think this was the biggest gift I was able to give myself to allow to, for once and for all, liberate myself. And I went at it with everything, not holding anything back.
Well, the response as a reader who didn't know you before and now feels like, I'm like so invested in your life. And like, I was like, I want to hug this woman. Oh my gosh. The starting with what you went through as a child and the way you wrote about Jay and all of the sick stuff that you didn't even realize. And the remembering the hopes that you had that like, it would all make sense at some point and that you could even remember and then articulate it so well that like, this is how you made sense of it at the time. And all of that as a child and the way that you tell it. I mean, you were like his age. I mean, my son is here in the background. You were like a little, I mean, the innocence met with what happened. I don't know if you feel comfortable even discussing it or, I mean, I know you wrote about it.
It's out there. Absolutely. That's been the purpose of it. And I know it's made many people uncomfortable, but to me, the aspect of it is to be able to bring it out because I think it was so tough to, even for me, it was, if anything, this whole writing of this book has been possibly the hardest mountain I have ever had to climb in my life. And now I've been 4 years sober, so I had to do it. I really was embracing all these emotions for the very first time in my life, but I really needed to do it. And I mean, it was heartbreaking to be able to go back to that innocence. And I mean, and I think I just know that I am not alone. And I know this resonates with a lot of people. And just, and the way that even we're making so many strides right now as a society in general, there is still so much stigma to it. Mm-hmm. Many families, even in my own community, many families, even for my own family, was even hard. And it's almost like you don't want to touch, you don't want to be able to face that, things like this can happen and how can it affect. And so for me, and what you just said, Zibby, right now, my whole dream, and I felt I put myself out there and to get the sweet reaction that you've gotten as if like you want to give me a hug. That is how I am. I'm receiving this book and it's such a beautiful gift. So I mean this is more than a dream come true for me.
Oh, well, I'm sure it couldn't have been easy. I mean, if I were writing these stories, I don't even know. I think I would just have tears. Like, I feel like my keys on my computer would just be drenched going through it. But especially the loss, my gosh, the part about the scene. I don't want to give things away, but the bridge that day, the way you told the whole story. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh! I mean, I could literally cry just thinking about it again. It was like so emotional. Oh my gosh.
And I said, what I was doing a lot is, and I love it because that is, I kept having to take my own medicine while writing it. I remember, and luckily for me, one of the most beautiful, I guess, tools that I have learned that helped me stay strong and sober through this experience was to develop a lot of compassion meditation. I was able to learn that way ahead of writing the book. And a lot of it is, to have to give yourself that space if things are getting really hard, and I would, the times of it. I don't know if it was, God, I hope people don't take it the wrong way, but the pandemic on that degree was a blessing in disguise for me because I really needed to be alone and center and just simply focus. And there'll be times when getting through the scenes would be so hard, and I would be crying my eyes out. And I simply would be practicing self-compassion, and I would be putting my hands on my heart.
Wow.
And speaking of love, we have...
Speaking of love.
Yes.
Let me do a coloring. I have all the colored pencils right there.
This is so sweet. It's so sweet.
He was in the other room, but I just felt like he was so lonely in there. Anyway.
Oh, it is so sweet. At the end, I mean, we're talking about community, we're talking about family, and this is what really matters. I mean, this is...
Yeah. Well, my whole show is Moms Don't Have Time. It's like my whole brand, and it's like it's very on brand for me. Because,
and guess what? And here right now, this is. Yeah. I mean, this conversation couldn't be any perfect as we are connecting. No, I'm serious. I mean, as we're connecting and as we're talking about, I mean, like the hardest thing for me as an adult, and this has been the gift, liberating myself. I had the shadow of just that pain, mm-hmm. I mean, of that little innocence being stolen, yeah. and really rekindling with just kind of my own little girl. And actually it is something that, it's as we grow older, especially when things get on our way in life, I think we sometimes tend to undermine just that importance. I mean, what can make us happy? What is, it goes back to that essence. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how old we are, we still all have that little child inside of us. And so, if some of us have had to endure some things, it's matter of bringing it, kind of living with it together and reconnecting to all of it.
It's so true. I have to say, I mean, I love memoir. Like memoir is by far my favorite genre to read, and I could read memoirs all day. Oh my gosh, I could just. But I've started to, I feel like I went into this. There are so many stories, not to the extent necessarily of yours, some not to compare, but just similar stories of child abuse, child molestation, child, all of this that I'm actually feeling more distrustful of men. I'm like, how can there be so many men who have done this? Like, for every writer who shares, there are so many stories of that are unspoken to anyone, or certainly publicly, and it just, the magnification of that, when you think about a society in which this has happened to so many young people, what does that do when people grow up? And I mean, you've overcome this in such an amazing way and you can see the emotional work that you've done, and you're very open about the times when you weren't handling it, and that your life was sort of falling apart, not because necessarily of this, but just as life can do. But I don't know, sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, how could there be so many awful, awful men out there? So many to do this to kids. It blows my mind.
And I feel that is one of the other dreams for me with this book, is to bring shame out of the forefront. So just keep bringing it out of the shadows, keep bringing this notion that, yeah, maybe we no longer have this kind of issue. And I think more than anything is to be able to give power to other survivors, not just women, a lot of men as well.
It's true. It's true. I mean, it's just children in general.
Yeah, in children. I mean, just in general. I mean, being able to bring it out in the forefront, being able to cross through that stigma, and the more that we can share those stories, those hard journeys, that is what creates a change within. Even, I mean, especially me being a Latina, within my community, it's a lot of like, and the number of sweet, notes and reaches out that I've received of people telling me like, God, this happened to me. I couldn't tell my family, or my mom doesn't want me to say anything. We just need to break through that. And that to me is part of the bigger conversation. I mean, the dream is like, we can end this as a society, as a global society. I am so grateful as well of all the work that we have done from the time that I had to endure through this to now. And but it's still, we can't stay discontent. We have to continue further. And so that's something that excites me about being able to bring. I mean, for me, for example, when I'm bringing the book down to Peru, I mean, we're translating it to Spanish.
That's great.
Yes, we are. And, this stigma, we have to break. I mean, like I'm going to Peru when we're translating the book in Spanish, which is for me, it's a gift, and we'll have it here in the Spanish world in the US, but in Peru, particularly the way that it's been received, or at least this whole idea, we're going to be able to develop almost this workshop to be able to bring this around when we do a little book tour in the country, and be able to work with actually how to break and overcoming the shame and the stigma. I mean, the percentages, even though here we've made so many strides, in so many places still, it is forbidden. And so this is, to me, part of my work for the rest of my life. I mean, being able to continue bringing this journey. And I think, the first brave step for me was to totally be as raw, as vulnerable, as open, and being able to invite others and tell them, we're not alone. And, we still are intact. We still are beautiful. We still are whole.
Wow. Well, I hope this wins all sorts of awards and all of that. I'm serious, because it's so, I mean, I don't like using the word brave, because everybody always talks about memoirs being so brave, but it is brave, but it's also just such a generous act. it's just so generous of you to share this much of yourself with the world, and also to write in such a beautiful way. I mean, it's not just, this is not like a diary just thrown down here. I mean, it's literary, right? Your sentences are really well crafted, and I just, anyway, I don't know what to say. I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
Silvia, what an honor. That is, I mean, listen.
Tell me a little more about the writing, like as a craft for you, and sort of how you honed that skill, and if there were books that you feel like were really instrumental in your journey, or other huge influences on your writing.
I feel that for me, my agent disagrees, but I tell everyone we all have a book in us. We all have our own stories. And that is true. We all have our own journeys. And just as you were mentioning, to me, memoirs are my favorite read. There's something really personal. And I grew up, I remember as a kid, I always was drawn. I mean, we didn't have a lot of the genre of memoir in Peru, and even some of the traditional fiction stories would be nice, but I wasn't never really drawn to it. I almost wanted something that, the facts and just stories. And I was a huge fan of Reader's Digest. They used to be huge down there. And just overall stories that to me just felt like, wow, these worlds that people are taking. And so I think I've always been very moved by people, kind of being able to be open and sharing. I mean, especially some of the historical memoirs of just journeys that people have gone through. And I love that aspect of the reinvention. And especially when I was struggling, even with my drinking and with my addiction, I kept always looking for the light. Mm-hmm. And so in terms of those, I mean, memoirs have always been my biggest inspirations, and just going through them, it's been very sweet. Over the last several years, I think I've done a lot of, self-examination work. The Body Keeps Score was pivotal because I had to rely so much on my own body to remember. And so, for me, particularly, this book was very structured. Coming through the memoir aspect of things, we had a lot, it almost felt as a business project. It was very much, I knew it was going to be the very beginning, what was going to be the very end, what would be the chapters, all structured. So I kind of had the opportunity to explore through this almost as in every particular chapter, all the different scenes. So it gave me the opportunity to just dive deeper into trying to bring all the elements. And especially for me, the hardest chapters were the early ones, as if trying to reconnect to so much information that I hadn't even faced in decades. And that was just really hard. And I had a lot of therapy help for that. I think that was really pivotal. I mean, being able to kind of, being held back. So through this whole journey, just because it was so hard to put it out, I was lucky that I wasn't just alone on that sense. I had a lot of support, a lot of hand holding that would be able to allow me to get out a lot of those emotions. Luckily for the mountain parts, I've always kept a journal. I've always kept and just the sides of all these different expeditions. That was something that was always so spectacular. And I remember just to take as much information. So in a way, I mean, I never imagined when I was climbing, this is what I'm going to be for the book. But it was just for me. I remember eventually I felt, well, hopefully if I'm old, I can be able to reopen this and remember, just remember this particular site and just this emotion that you were feeling. But it was definitely a whole combination of being able to reawaken. And I know, and that's when for anybody who gets into a block, just trust that the information is inside of us. We are just these walking encyclopedias that we just simply have to know how to reactivate this information and trust that what comes out is our own truth. And then, being able to play around with it and just being inspired by everything and being able to bring it forward.
I love it. It's awesome. Sylvia, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for discussing your book, for being so open, for just letting me rave about it to you directly, for dealing with my son behind me the whole time. And
no, this is part of the everyday. It's been such an honor. You've said exactly what has been possibly the most special feedback or just a reaction of the journey. I want people to know that they're not alone. I want people to know just the beauty that we have in all of us. And especially, when there's the opportunity of going out, I'm sure with your family, it's sometimes we've been locked in, and I can only imagine the last 2 years how they were for you, especially, But when things get back to normal, I feel nature can give us so much. And it's almost like this love story to nature too.
It's so true. I started a publishing company myself, and we have one book that I feel like you would respond really well to. It hasn't even been edited yet, but I feel like I want to send it to you just to...
Oh, please.
I feel like you would really get a lot out of it. And I'd love to introduce you to the author, who's very young. And I just think you guys should talk. So maybe I can get your...
This is part of, if anything, to me, this is a community effort. This has almost been my introduction. This line of, hello, I'm Silvia from Peru.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Silvia from In the Shadow of the Mountain. So I am, we need to keep bringing stories out. And this is, we need to continue. I think this is what creates a change. And this is where we all are here, in a way.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thank you. Big hug.
Big hug. Okay. And who knows? Maybe we'll meet. But
I would love to meet you. I would love to meet you in real life. So
where are you?
I'm in New York. Where are you?
Cool. I'm actually in San Francisco, but I'm just doing a quick visit. I'm gonna come back in August, so maybe we'll coordinate. But it would be fun.
That would be great. I'm in LA a lot too, so maybe one of these times
we will stay.
Okay.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.